be talking about diabetes in both the workplace and in college. So I guess I should give you guys at least my qualifications. So the reason why I'm qualified to give this discussion is because I have worked a job before and I've been to college before. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a medical expert, so just keep that in mind with our presentation. I don't know if Mo has any of these credentials herself, but just me personally. I'm just going to be sharing with you the tips and tricks I've picked up along the way in these settings, and hopefully you find them helpful.
Yeah. Just so we're clear about my qualifications, just kidding. But I did go to college for 5 years, and I have worked at a couple of different places. So yeah, we're just going to talk about kind of how to transition the easiest into those new experiences, because diabetes is going to be a part of that. So I can't see you guys right now, which is the one downside of being the presenter, but can someone tell me, can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then Jeb, since I can only see the presentation, if people want to jump in with questions, or if anything goes wrong, just tell me, because I won't be able to see what's happening.
Certainly. And there will be a question and answer portion at the end of this too. So it's not just going to be us talking at you guys like it's a Zoom meeting for school. All right. So we separate this out into 4 easy steps, so it's easy to remember. So number 1 is to know your rights. So about a little less than a year ago, I had a job offer rescinded from me because my employer found out I was diabetic. This is not likely to happen to you, thankfully, because we have something in the United States called the Americans with Disabilities Act. It was passed in 1990, and it covers pretty much anyone who has a medical condition. But for diabetics specifically, it states that most employers are not allowed to ask or deny employment based on your diabetes. Now, there are a select few jobs that diabetics aren't allowed to hold. I think commercial airline pilot is one of them. And then some branches of the military won't let you serve if you have diabetes. But other than that, you're pretty strongly protected under this act. What had happened for me is that the job I was taking was overseas in another country, and so therefore these laws didn't protect me. Also, under the Americans with Disabilities Act, it states that your employer is legally required to make reasonable accommodation for your condition. So this doesn't mean that you can go in and say, hey, I need this, this, and this because I have diabetes. Basically, it means that you tell your employer your condition and they create a plan for you. Now, for pretty much every place that I've worked, I basically just tell them, hey, I have type 1 diabetes, and they ask, okay, what do you need from me? And I just explain to them, well, if I have low blood sugar, I need to sit out for 15 minutes, let my blood sugar go up. Pretty much everyone that I've worked for has been really understanding about it. If you do feel like you're being discriminated against, there are a few legal options you can take. There is a formal workplace discrimination complaint that you can make. I don't suggest doing this because you need a lot of evidence. You need to have a really strong case to make it known that that's what's going on. Or you can file a lawsuit. Again, these are big, big steps. It's a scary thing to do. So my best advice is that there is a really great resource for you. The American Diabetes Association, they have a section on their website. They'll give you a phone number to call, and you'll explain your situation to them, and they will tell you what they think you should do next to rectify the situation. They'll give you free legal advice. I used this when I was going through my situation. They were very, very helpful. They ultimately advised that I not take legal action just because it would be a very long process. However, I do want to stress it's not likely that this will happen because it is illegal to deny employment because of diabetes. It's just something good to keep in mind on the off chance that it does happen. Mo, do you have any thoughts about diabetes and your rights in college?
Yeah. So I just wanted to tell you a couple things that I used or that I knew were available to me. So that part B, tell your professors when you start a new semester that you use technology to manage your diabetes. I just always liked to walk up after maybe the first day of class and be like, just so you know, I have type 1 diabetes. I take really good care of it. But to do that, I need to use some tools. My CGM, my blood sugar is on my phone. I even like open it up and show them like what that looks like. And I just say like, I just want you to know I'm not sitting on my phone. If I'm using technology, it's probably related to that. That seemed to go a long way with professors. Even as technology is more and more integrated into college classrooms and lectures, it's still just nice for them to know. I think they appreciate it. The second point is that all schools have a school disability resource center. The name is going to vary school to school, but you can look into that and think about whether you would want to register with them or not. It's usually a pretty streamlined process. Takes like a note from your doctor and some sort of quick application. But with that, kind of the things that it grants you would be accommodations and protections. So like I'm taking a final exam and my blood sugar's 50. Like I know I'm not being able to do my best schoolwork right now. And also I need to get out my phone and like see what my blood sugar is doing. Getting out your phone in the middle of a college final is frowned upon. So just by registering with that resource center, they might have other options for you, like taking your test at a different time, being able to use certain devices during the test so that you can manage your diabetes, and also just being registered with them in case something did go wrong, you missed a final because you had ketones, or something like that. Just having that kind of backup plan in place of being registered with your school can be really helpful. I think I heard a question or a comment.
Yeah, we have a question from, actually, I'll keep questions. Well, actually, everyone can see the chat. What am I saying? Olivia asked, can you have a 504 plan in college like in high school?
Oh, good question. Actually, I've just been learning about this as a SPED teacher, and 504 doesn't technically fall under that, but sorry, that was long-winded. Anyways, so 504s technically follow you until you are 18. This would be like the extension of that. So you have your 504 isn't going to transfer with you, but to get that kind of thing on file and to have those accommodations in place, this is how you would get that in a college setting. Does that help?
So, like, would you get the same accommodations, sort of, but it would just be different? You would just sign up with your school's disability resource center to get the accommodations you need?
Yes, and I'm not, it might vary school to school. Like a school might have, these are all the accommodations we offer students with type 1 diabetes, or it might be have your doctor write us a list of the accommodations you would need, and then you would have to work with your doctor, and then they would honor that. I think school to school, it might vary, but definitely look into their resource center. Like if you know what college you are going to, they usually have a website and they have a lot of information on there. I didn't personally do that when I went to college, just for, just to be honest, but I did look into it. And if you want to, it's a great resource that's already there. It just takes a few steps, like I said, on your part and your doctor's part. At the end of this slideshow, this point C just says we put a bunch of resources at the end. So that would be a place to find more information, but you can also, of course, reach out to camp staff and ask more questions.
I know for myself in particular, I reached out to camp to see if they had any resources when I was going through my situation as well. So camp is a great place to not only have a good time, but also get in touch with people that can help with any diabetic issue.
For sure.
All right, so number 2 is tell trusted people. So this is just something that I've personally done. Mo can speak on it as well, but generally whenever I've had an interview for a job, I have not mentioned my diabetes, just so it's not something that is in the back of the mind of whoever's making the hiring decisions. It could potentially be a point against you. Unfortunately, discrimination of this sort does exist. However, on my very first day of work, I almost always tell my employer, hey, so I have diabetes. And again, we just go through what that specifically means. You're not legally obligated to. Technically, you could work at the same place for 20 years and never tell anyone that you're diabetic and have nobody ever know. However, me personally, I would prefer to have my coworkers and the people I'm working for know this about me, so that if there is an emergency, or even if I have to come in, a couple minutes late because I had a high blood sugar that I needed to take care of, they understand that that's the reason why. Also, if you're going to be in a situation where you'll have to take your blood sugar, maybe treat a low end, I'd rather have my coworkers, know this about me rather than have them being like, what are you doing? Why are you eating candy right now? So just let people know. It's good for your benefit in the sake of emergency. And from what I found, it also a lot of times leads to interesting conversations, which I don't know. I can understand. You're probably pretty sick of explaining to everyone what diabetes is, but I always love an opportunity to educate people about it.
Yeah, I'm the same. And I even find that once I am working there, like you said, and I'll mention it to someone or they see my pump, I've had a more pleasant experiences with people being like, oh, I know what that is. Like, my best friend has diabetes, or I have diabetes, or something like that. I have met multiple people at my workplaces that also have diabetes or have someone close to them who have diabetes. And you're not going to know until either something sparks that conversation, or you step out and start that conversation yourself. For instance, I work in a school. I told the teacher who teaches right next to me that I have diabetes, and she has experience with people, mostly with type 2 diabetes, but also some experience with type 1 diabetes. And one time we were in a staff meeting, my phone was going off, I was going low. I told her I need to go get something. And she was like, oh my gosh, yes. She kind of had this extra reaction. I was like, no, it's okay. I'm just going to go. Like, if the principal asks where I went during a staff meeting, please cover for me. But actually, because my classroom is so far away from that meeting, and I should have taken tabs with me, but I didn't. It took me a long time to get there, and then I sat for a couple minutes eating my glucose tabs. And I was on my way back, and she was like jogging down the hall. Like, she was keeping an eye on her watch. Okay, Mo's been gone for over 10 minutes. Like, she was ready to come help me if there was an emergency. And that just made me feel really understood as someone with diabetes, that someone would know like what's going on with me in that moment, and B, understand how serious it could have been. And I would have never had that experience if I hadn't, opened up and told her about it. So definitely in case of emergency, I think it's good to tell someone. It might be kind of hard to tell a roommate or a dorm mate in college, but we all know, changing your pump site or doing an insulin injection is not something we hide all the time, or can even be tricky to hide. So they're going to see it. They're going to see your box of diabetes supplies under the bed. I always just wanted to educate them about it. People thought it was pretty cool that I have like an organ operating outside of my body that keeps me alive. I just got creative with how I talked about it, and they actually seemed to think it was pretty cool. So the last point is again a resource on the last slide, but there are on-campus groups at colleges all over the place where you could connect with other students with type 1 diabetes, and that might be a really fun thing to check out or to be a part of, especially if you're used to having something like that at your high school. That resource, I believe, is from College Diabetes Network, and they actually have like a map, and you can say, oh, I'm going to college in this place at this university, and it will pull resources for you. So that's a pretty easy one to use. Anything else to add, Jeb?
No, and in fact, I didn't know about this on-campus group map thing, so I'm gonna have to check it out if I'm ever on campus again. I mean,
Yeah.
who knows?
Or even I bet right now they're doing virtual meetings probably.
Yes,
I would
very
hope.
likely.
That'd be cool.
All right, number 3, technology can help. I personally didn't use a CGM for a very, very long time. It made me worried that I would micromanage my blood sugar, but now that I do use a CGM, I love it. It's wonderful. It has helped me in my personal life, but also in my work life as well. Most of my experience working has been in settings like camp. So I've worked at a couple of daycares, and I've also been a teacher's assistant at a middle school. So as you can imagine, when you're running around and chasing 5-year-olds, it can make your blood sugar drop and then spike and then drop and then spike. And it's good to have a continuous glucose monitor with you so that you can monitor those patterns and basically say, okay, I can see that I'm treading downward pretty quickly. Maybe just pop a couple of glucose tabs in my mouth to keep me going. Yes, technically, your work does have to let you take a break, and if you do have low blood sugar. However, I personally want to limit those breaks as much as possible, just because I don't want to, I guess, have any extra accommodations due to my diabetes. I want to basically show, hey, just because I have diabetes doesn't mean I can't, work just as well as any other employee. So using a CGM, largely cut down on my lows at work and made it way, way easier just to, have a fairly active job on my feet without having an emergency. Because as you can imagine, these kids, they're not going to slow down for you just because you're feeling a little woozy.
Yeah, to echo that, I didn't use a CGM for a long time because I had problems with it getting approved by my insurance. Hopefully that's better for anyone now who's gone through that as well, but it is so much easier. I always like to teach other people around me about my devices. Don't have to go super in depth, but like I have my pump that sits, in my pocket or on my hip all the time, and you might see it. All you need to know is that it's for my diabetes. And that people usually kind of get the idea there, but at least they're not, I don't know, questioning you about it. I like to just be the one to say, hey, here's this. If you have questions, let me know. But otherwise, like Jeb said, I use all these things just to make sure I can be the best teacher, employee, student that I can be. And these help me get there.
Yeah, and especially when it comes to pumps and tubing, it is probably best that people understand how important it is to you. I know, especially in my line of work, I worked with kids as young as 2 years old, and if they see something hanging out of your pocket like that, they're going to want to pull it. So it's good to not only explain, even if there's someone very young, hey, don't touch that, or to your employees your coworkers, so that they can warn you that something like that's going to happen. I have a friend, his sister has type 1 diabetes, and she's a vet. And as you can imagine, crazy dogs, they're going to try to pull out any tube sticking out of your pocket or out of your shirt. And so she has had to inform everyone that is around her, hey, this is something I'm going to need to keep track of. Could you be sure to hold on to the dog when it's shaking around like that? And it just makes things a whole lot simpler.
Oh man, I'm feeling lucky that I teach high school and not work with little ones that would grab at stuff. I never thought about that.
So number 4, be prepared. So like I said, I'm sorry that I'm talking about my work at a daycare so much, since most of you guys will probably never work at a daycare. I'm just drawing upon my own personal experience. But I was moving from classroom to classroom, so I almost always had a bag with me that just had, my meter and my test kit and, extra glucose tabs as well. I understand that there's some jobs, especially food service jobs, which are pretty common first jobs to have, where you're not exactly able to carry around a bag room to room, but there almost always is a break room where you can keep your stuff, it's close by, and you can just excuse yourself for a moment and go to an area where it doesn't exactly have to be as sterile, since there's not food being prepared there. Really just bottom line, make sure there's something nearby so you're not in a situation where you don't have anything at arm's reach. And like Mo said, no one's perfect when it comes to their diabetes. I certainly am not. There will be moments where I should have had low stuff near me and I didn't. But to have a plan and just make sure that you minimize those times, so you don't have an emergency, can really help you out in the work setting.
Yeah, one of my first jobs was at a place where we had a break room, and I knew I couldn't. It was like a secure facility, so I couldn't leave and go out to my car if I needed something. That would take way too long and kind of a process. So I just made kind of a Rubbermaid, tote. I showed it to my supervisor. I labeled it Mo's medical supplies. Because to someone it might look like, oh, free juice boxes, free granola bars, but it's a medical supply, right? We understand that. So I always, am very specific with it's medical, and just tell them or ask them, can I keep this in the break room? And they're pretty, in my experience, pretty accommodating with that. Similarly, just planning ahead, some other situations that are not fun, but we know they happen. What would you do if you wake up with ketones, or if you wake up sick and cannot go to work or to class? And this makes me think of, like we said before, telling trusted people, or talking to your employer, before something like this happens, just so they're aware and they are not taken aback or not surprised by one of these situations if it should happen. And then always have stuff at home, especially if you're moving out and kind of living on your own for the first time. I know that was something different for me. Like, okay, I'm in charge of my groceries. I'm in charge of my medical supplies, and things like, what would I do if I had ketones or if I'm sick? Well, I'm going to need these things that my mom just always had. For me, that's like Sprite and saltines. Sprite for like if you still have ketones, but all of your insulin is going to your blood sugar. You still need to be taking that insulin to get the ketones away, but you need to not go low at the same time. So yeah, just planning ahead. Maybe your family does something different, but whatever that is for you, making sure now that that's your responsibility that that you're ready, because we would just hate for you to be, have to trek to the store with large ketones. That's miserable. I've done that before too. Anything you want to add there, Jeb?
Not really. I know for me, I'm a huge penny pincher. When it comes to living at home on my own, that just really, or living on my own, that struck a chord with me, because I remember when I first moved out, I was like, oh man, you mean I have to get all this low stuff I didn't have to really worry about before? So I used to have juices all the time when I was living with my parents. Now that I'm living on my own, my go-to is more little hard candies, because you can get more bang for your buck for that. But that's more of a budgeting tip than a diabetes tip.
Hey, no, well, it's both, and that's a great tip.
Yeah, no, juice is expensive. Really just do what you can do.
Right. I guess I've never done the like hard candies as load treatment, but I know tons of people that do, and it's much easier to carry around. Why am I
exactly
toting around a jug of glucose tabs? I should try it. Thanks. Last slide, just kind of some resources for you. All of these blue links you can click on and it'll take you somewhere else. So kind of workplace information, some legal stuff like Jeb was talking about, also from the American Diabetes Association, your rights in the workplace. Here's some information for rights as a college student from Beyond Type 1, great resource. This College Diabetes Network, that's the diabetes kind of social groups by campus, the map I was talking about. And then just as a catch-all, and one that I personally use all the time, pretty much for almost any question I have about type 1 and life, Beyond Type 1 has some excellent articles and discussion forums and things like that. So I would suggest checking that one out. They have a whole section for students. They have a whole section for like first jobs. They have a whole section for just life as you get older with diabetes. So I would suggest that. Am I cool to exit out of the slideshow so I can see your wonderful faces again?
Do it.
Cool.
All right. Do we have any questions from the audience about work or college or really anything diabetes related that we can answer for you guys?
Looks like Jennifer has a question. Go for it.
Okay, so one of my dad's co-workers' daughters has type 1, and we're going to be going to the same college. And she has the doctor's note, but the college also requires like accommodations from ACT and SAT. She was one of the few students that I know who hasn't taken it because her school wasn't required as part of the application process. So how can she get accommodations for herself?
Ooh, good question. Like I said, and it sounds like she's experiencing this, different schools will have different requirements and things like that. My suggestion, since I don't know her and I don't know the school, would be to find their website, and they usually have a direct number, and have someone walk them through it. That's their job. That's what they sit there to help students do, and they want to help students through the process. So without knowing anything else on my end, that would be my suggestion.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry she's going through that.
Yeah, just to, oh, sorry, Mo.
No.
Just to piggyback off what Mo is saying, this is kind of a more general tip about college, but there are people who are paid to help you in pretty much any aspect of college, and nobody ever takes advantage of those resources. So if there's ever something you're confused about, just look under the website of whatever specific thing you're wondering about, and there's usually a phone number and an email address, and just ask. Don't be afraid to ask. You know, like I said, it's their job to walk you through those things. So yeah, don't be like me. I kind of kept to myself and just pushed through, but you're paying for those things as a college student, so be sure to take advantage of them.
Did either of you guys go to college out of state?
Ooh, good question. I did not.
So I go to college in California, but I also am a California resident now, so I'm technically not going out of state.
Well, like, you, in the sense that, like, when you go to college, your parents, like, aren't there the same way that you are at home. So did you have, like, friends on campus that also have diabetes, or, like, did you ever have, like, a dorm roommate that, like, also has diabetes? I was kind of thinking about that, like, if that's something that you took into consideration.
You can request it. Oh, Minion, did you have any thoughts on this?
Well, I was just going to say, because I went to school in Texas, so that's really far away from home. So obviously, because my parents live in Oregon. For me, I know a lot of schools have like diabetes clubs. And so I would definitely look to see if your college has one of those. Like there's a whole college diabetes network is what it's called. And a lot of schools have that. So that's like a really good way to get in touch with people that also have diabetes. Like for me, I didn't request a diabetic roommate. I don't know if my school even, like we didn't request roommates at all. Some schools don't allow that. And so like I just told my roommate and stuff, but honestly, one of the things I did is like I would see people that had like a pump on them or something like that, and I would just like push myself to go up to them and be like, hey, I have diabetes too, which ended up being really great because like for me, when I moved off campus, it just happened that I had a girl that lived across the street from me that also had diabetes. And we found out that, and one night she like needed Lantus because she didn't have any, couldn't get to the pharmacy to get any. And she was like able to walk across the street and like get a syringe, get Lantus. And so she was okay. So I think you don't, it's hard. It's definitely an adjustment because you're adjusting to college and everything too. But for me, it was more just like pushing myself to like, if I saw somebody that had diabetes, to just go up to them and be like, hey, I have it too. Like, I know that's kind of an odd thing to do sometimes, but almost everyone that I did that to were like super grateful that I did, just because they had that resource too then.
For me, I think in college, I didn't know anyone who was going to go to the same college as me. I went to Portland State. I didn't know anyone who was going to have diabetes there, but I knew that my camp friends were just, you know, a phone call or a text message away, because we didn't have Instagram or anything like that back then. But just knowing that and knowing like, oh, Kiwi goes to school not that far away from me. We could talk or meet up once in a while. So just knowing those connections, even, you know, if I didn't find them on campus yet, and I was still waiting to see that person's pump sticking out of their pocket or whatever, just like remembering the really great network that I already had, helped me a lot personally. So for people or for campers here, like, are you close to this part? Are any of you like already working in a job, or you think you're doing that soon, or is college coming up soon for anyone?
Yeah, I'm going to start taking college classes next year as a junior in high school. I'm going to be going to a community college to be taking some classes.
Oh, cool.
Nice. Take advantage of that. That's a really good resource.
Yeah, so kind of like some commuting also from your two schools. Gotcha. Well, congrats. Yeah, that's a really good opportunity. Nice. Jennifer?
I'll be going to college this fall.
No. Are you serious?
What? No way.
Yeah.
I feel so old.
I can't believe you're that big.
And she's amazing. She's already asked me about how she can help me with type 1, and I'm like, this is awesome.
Oh, that's amazing.
Where are you going, Jennifer?
Oregon State University.
Awesome.
College.
Cool.
Nice.
I actually have a friend who's your age who has type 1 that is going to be going there and be a freshman as well. So I'm sure we could see if we could connect you guys, because I think that would be a great resource.
That would be amazing.
Well, I still have a while before I'm going to college, but I know that I do not want to go to college in Oregon. I want to move away from my family. As much as I love them, I want to be away, like just go do my own thing. And so, yeah, I'm looking into what that would look like for me. As much as my mom would be sad.
I think that's cool. I think that's cool. Don't let diabetes stop you from going to any school that you want to go to. It doesn't need to be any sort of hindrance. For me, the job that I mentioned previously before, it was a job that I could have done. Diabetes, it wasn't something that diabetes would have gotten in the way of. It basically was a camp job. It's just that its setting was in a place. Okay, I mean, basically, it was a job on a cruise line, and their issue was they didn't want to have a diabetic person on the water. So that's really rare for diabetes to get in the way of going anywhere or doing anything that you want to do. So don't let my specific situation deter you at all. If you want to go to college in Zimbabwe, like go for it. Don't let that even be something that you go, oh, I don't want to do it because I have diabetes. Of course, it's something to consider, to keep in mind. Okay, if I do end up going to college in this place, I'll have to do some extra planning. But don't let it ever be the deciding thing that keeps you from doing it.
I think about too, GCC is not the only like diabetes network, right? You might find that there's already a diabetes camp in the state where you go to college, and you could give them a call and just say, like, I'm a recent graduate, like, do you have counselors who are going here? Do you have someone you could give my email address to, or something like that? Like their network or other networks they're there. You just gotta, find them and ask to be a part of it. I know like Dudley Camp, for example, has campers from all over the United States. So maybe someone's already going to that college that you could connect with or something like that. Any other questions or just thoughts or stuff you want to talk about?
I have a question for you guys that I remember when I first started applying for jobs, especially jobs at more like I don't know, well-known, like when I was applying for a job at Nordstrom way back in the day to work as a sales associate, a lot of those applications have a little portion that's like about disabilities, and you have the option to like say if you have a disability, say if you don't have a disability, or prefer not to answer. And I remember when I was going through like first applying for jobs, like legally they're not allowed to use that information against you during the hiring process, but I would always get worried that, you know, there's still always the possibility that they look at that stuff, or I would get worried. And so I was wondering what you guys did, because sometimes I would debate between checking I prefer not to answer and yes, because I was like, well, if I check yes and they see that, what if something happens with that? But then also I felt like I was almost hiding something if I clicked I prefer not to answer. So I was just thinking back when I was applying for jobs. I don't know if you guys ever had that experience or have any advice for that for people who are applying to those kinds of jobs.
Good question. I have never personally been asked to fill out an application like that. Jeb, have you? Or maybe Kiwi or Gopher?
I haven't. I don't know. The only job that I have ever mentioned that I have diabetes before I've actually been hired is camp, for obvious reasons. So honestly, I don't think it should ever be something where you feel like you're hiding it, as long as you tell them when you first start working. But you know, it's the kind of thing where if you consider like, what if there's someone who is similar to you in every way except for the fact that they don't have diabetes? You know, which one are they going to hire? Technically, yes, that is discrimination, but there's no way for you to prove that's discrimination. And, you know, it's something that's so, you know, minor, they might have no issue with doing that in their brain. So personally, for myself, I would just say I prefer not to answer. And to be honest, I'm kind of surprised that's on the application, because that seems kind of like a legal gray area to me.
I've had quite a few for, I mean, just because of like, well, my degree in high school is fashion merchandising. When you apply to like any corporations, like a lot of those in my experience have that form on there that says that. And it says that they say they don't use it and that kind of stuff, but it is something that I have come across. So I just thought I'd
Well, why else would they want that information?
Exactly. So
yeah, I've seen that before, and I think and this takes a little bit of like strategical thinking. But one thing you can do if you don't want to check prefer not to answer because you do feel like that's hiding something, is kind of just focus on how having diabetes could be an asset to that position. I always like to really focus on like, you know, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when I was young. I give like a 1-sentence explanation in case they don't know what it is, and I don't want them thinking that it's something it's not. And then I say, you know, this has really helped me with taking on extra responsibility at a young age, close attention to detail, being flexible in situations, being prepared. Like those are all things that are completely applicable to jobs. And I think the way you word it and the way you strategically think about it and put that in your resume, if you do want to be open about having diabetes, it could actually work to your advantage.
sweet. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Kiwi. I know that I have an internship that I'm doing this fall, where you basically had to talk about some difficulties that you overcame. And, you know, diabetes is a great one to bring up, because let's be honest, you guys have had this unique experience in this way, and you can talk about how it has made you a more responsible person. I know for myself, I often like to say that getting diabetes was one of the best things that ever happened to me, because it made me healthier and it made me more responsible. And I don't know where I would have gotten those skills otherwise. So, of course, just know your audience, you know.
Your journey and your unique story with diabetes is a really great topic for college essays. You guys might have touched on that earlier when I had to step out, but it's a really good way to showcase who you are as a unique individual and the hardships you've had to overcome, while kind of focusing on the positive outcomes of that. And colleges love that.
Good point. I know I've written a few of those essays myself. Especially if you are, oh yes, thank you, Minion. There are also like certain scholarships you can apply for. Just you're qualified just for having type 1 diabetes. Awesome. Like you guys were saying, how to like frame diabetes as an asset for a prospective employer, not just for yourself, but for someone who doesn't understand it like you do. I think especially when I've been applying for jobs with kids or camps or youth groups or anything like that, they might want someone who knows a lot about type 1 diabetes because they have students there, they have kids there who have type 1 diabetes, and they would feel more comfortable, not learning that themselves. They would feel more comfortable having you be a point person with those parents to help talk to them about, when they do drop off their kids somewhere, daycare, camp, etc. Just like we do at GCC. So that's kind of been an experience I had where people finally find that out and they're like, oh, this is great. We didn't know, like, perfect. So you can really be an asset. Like you guys said, depending on the job, just think about what they might want from you and what you can give to that situation that's really unique. Well, we've been here almost an hour. Any last questions? I don't want you to feel rushed off, but it's been a really awesome talk so far. Thank you guys for bringing your perspectives and questions.
On the topic of working and having diabetes, I'd like to pitch our Friday meeting at 3 o'clock about what it's like to work at Gales Creek Camp. We know that our former campers make some of our very, very best counselors, as evidence in front of you. So hopefully you guys can make it at 3. Minion, myself, Lilo, several others will be there to tell you a little bit about what it's like to apply to work at camp, to CIT at camp, to spend a whole summer at camp, and how to prepare for that if that's something you're interested in. So love to see you all there. And I want to say thank you to Jeb and Mo. This was awesome. Thank you to everybody.
Thanks, Gopher.
Thank you guys for coming out. Yeah, thank you, Gopher.
Yeah, and thank you guys for being here, because it wouldn't be fun to give a presentation to Jeb, who helped write it. So you guys are the best part of this. All right. Well, we will we'll have the recording of the talk available. So if you want to go back and listen to anything, or if your parents are wondering what that was all about, Gopher?
I have learned a good way to end these because it's always awkward at ending these Zooms.
Yeah.
So we all just wave and smile, and then that's the last thing that we remember from the meeting. We click it and say goodbye. So everybody wave and smile. It's the last thing you remember.
Bye.
Bye.